This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We will do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. Excuse me. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen in your background. The chair recognizes the attendance of staff members Jen and Kevin and our recording secretary, Susan Cronin. The chair recognizes the attendance of all commissioners. Thank you for everyone for that. We always have, we've had very good attendance lately. To the commissioners, again, for commenting, I will call on you at the appropriate time. Let's try not to speak over each other. And I'll remind you, all votes have to be done by a roll call. And when I call your name, please state your name and your vote. And again, it's redundant, but even if you've made the motion or the second, I'm still going to ask for your vote. To our public participants, there will be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you'd like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function once that hearing has been opened. At the appropriate time, I will call for public comments, and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are posted on the agenda. First up tonight is other business. This is a request from the 300 committee to approve the municipal certificate for the Pariah Dog Farm. This is, in a manner of speaking, a reconsideration from last week. Given the fact that we have corrected information to show this is not in a Zone 2 water resource district, and there's clarification of the acreage. Jen, do you want to start on this?
Mr. Chairman, I just promoted Jessica Rittenauer and Jonathan Poloni up, who represent Pariah Dog Farm.
Good evening.
Where's Jessie? Oh, there she is.
Yeah, good
Hi,
evening.
Jess.
Hi. Thank you, Chairman, for your consideration in putting this agenda item on for this evening. We really appreciate the chance to come back and revisit this and share the corrected information and to add some clarifying statements from the 300 committee. And counsel for Matt Churchill, the property owner, Jonathan Poloni, is joining us tonight as well. So after I share brief comments, I hope you could recognize Jonathan to share some statements on behalf of the landowner. First and foremost, we have identified a key item where a correction and clarification is needed. The Zone 2 information that was in the conservation restriction, the statement was that 10% of the property is located in a Zone 2 area for drinking water protection. We learned clearly through the mapping that Jen did at the meeting last week, and then through subsequent verifications the next day, directly with the Massachusetts Zone 2 maps that are published by the Commonwealth. The property is not located within a Zone 2. That is an error that occurred in the drafting phase of the conservation restriction. We work with you on so many projects, and accuracy of the information we present to you is first and foremost important. So we apologize for the error. It was erroneously added there, and we just want to ensure that the record is clear and that the information I'm giving you is clear on the conservation values. So the municipal certificate document has been revised to remove the Zone 2 reference. We are still in the Water Resource Protection District that's town designated. Jen was able to display last week. So that section of the conservation restriction, it's in the introductory section, revised so that we're factually correct. Municipal certificate revised so that it's factually correct. So that, I just wanted to put that forward at the outset. And the next piece from the 300 committee would be on the, just again, clarifying the transaction, 300 committee land trust purchasing a conservation restriction from Matthew Churchill. Matt will continue to be the landowner and the farm operator for Pariah Dog Farm. We have a grant from the USDA So the parties to the transaction, 300 Committee Land Trust, Matt Churchill, USDA is signing off on everything as the grant source. And then, of course, the Town of Falmouth Board of Selectmen will be a signatory on the CR, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So the municipal certificate from the Conservation Commission is essentially a public benefit statement. We do hope that you will vote tonight to approve a statement of public benefit for this project as outlined in the revised and corrected certificate. And the primary benefit here that we see as an organization working on this project for Conservation for Falmouth, this is a unique project. This is a working farmland protection project. We don't do a lot of these. We've done a couple. This farm is a very important part of Falmouth. The land, as we said, 98% is in the prime agricultural soils. It's a very important property to keep in farming. So that was what brought the 300 committee to the table, working with Mr. Churchill on a permanent farmland protection project. We did have an opportunity to discuss the concepts of the organic farming. It's not a requirement that the 300 committee feels is appropriate to impose in this transaction. And I know Matt Churchill, through his attorney, has addressed that in a letter. I believe that concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer questions when we reach that point. But again, just want to thank you for your willingness to reconsider and to hear the information and to take a look at this. Thanks.
Thank you, Jess. Mr. Poloni.
Good evening, commissioners. I am here, as stated, to represent Matt Churchill, who is also in attendance if anyone feels like they would like to hear from him directly or ask him questions. I believe he's available. I think Jessica has done a very good job of presenting why we're here this evening and what we're trying to achieve. So I just wanted to underscore a few things that I put in the letter. I won't go through the whole letter, but I'll just point to a few things. First of all, I think the purpose of the CR here is obviously a very important one, but the benefit to the community in the town of Falmouth in preserving agriculture is the reason why the CR is being sought. I think that anybody who has shopped at Pariah Dog Farm has an understanding of the benefit that that farm provides to the community. They have an outstanding presence at the farmers market. The quality of their food, I can personally attest to, because I've kind of been raising my kids on Pariah Dog produce when it's available. And I remember one of my first experiences when my daughter was 2, eating carrots from Pariah Dog. I hadn't seen her eat any vegetable the way she did that. So it's really something that people in the community have already responded to. It's also preserving this open land, which is working agriculture, which Matt is very dedicated to. Looking at the actual CR itself, when you read the language, to me, as an attorney, looking at this as a legal document, it is a very thorough document. It has specific protections, restricting development on the restricted portion, which is 10 acres of the land. Over like 10.5 acres of the land is restricted from development, can only be used for farming. And if it's not used for farming, then it reverts back to open space through working with the 300 committee for proper planning. There's also a farm plan that's been worked out with USDA. That's part of the CR. There's a little bit of a development, the accessory building parcel, which is adjacent to the actual house, which is where Matt lives, is for accommodating any structures that will facilitate the farming that would be more permanent in nature. So this language, as Jessica pointed out, has been gone through by several state agencies as well as the USDA, and we've spent a considerable amount of time. I think it's actually been 7 years since Matt started this process to get to the point where we are here today. The other thing I wanted to touch on is the difficulty in actually achieving an organic certification, which I believe was what the amendment was for. Matt as I said, has very good quality produce, which is attested to the people who respond to his farm. But he does not have organic certification right now. And that's a process that usually takes 3 years from when you start the process to when you actually have the certification, when you can be certified. That has to do with the management practices that they require. But not only that, it requires a heavy amount of reporting that doesn't really seem financially viable for a farm of Matt's size, where he is the sole farmer. He relies a lot on volunteer labor to do the work. And right now, he's spending a lot of time also doing landscaping, which is how he's paying for the farm. So that brings me back to the purpose of the conservation restriction, which is to alleviate some of that financial burden from Matt's shoulders. And by putting in the conservation restriction allows Matt to pay off one of his mortgages, allows him to dedicate more time to the farm, and allows him to actually bring his farm to the point of actually paying for itself and being a financially viable operation. So it seems like adding to the burdens and putting more of a roadblock in front of that, maybe not. I don't know that that was the intention in seeking an organic certification, but I think just when you look at the intent of the project, what we're trying to achieve here, I don't think it helps add to the agricultural capacity of Falmouth, to improving the land and the caretaking that Matt's already doing there. So that's what I really have to say for that. And I'm open to any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you. Jen and or Kevin?
Jen, I think you're on mute.
I apologize for that. I just want to add that we usually are involved in these CRs with the 300 committee as either the landholder or the holder of the CR. So our role is a lot different in those cases. As Jessica said, and as Jonathan said, our role in this is just to kind of affirm the public interest. We are not party to the CR, and we are not party to the negotiations of the CR. And I think I sent you guys an email late today explaining that. You know, it was something that I needed to double check on because, again, you know, we're in a different situation than we usually are in. And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Kevin, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to accept it as written with the new information that it's not in a zone 2.
Thank you.
I'll second that, Gladfelter.
And the corrected
Okay.
yardage, acreage.
Correct. I will amend that with their correction on the appropriate acreage, Arlo Hawks.
Okay, so we will be voting on the request for the conservation restriction.
Municipal
Sorry?
Mr. Chairman, you're voting to recommend the municipal certification.
As applied for.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'm going to ask for comments anyway. Betsy?
I think this is in the public interest, as I did last week. And I think I just want to, I want to make a comment because I was one of Matt's, had a share in Matt's farm up till a couple of years ago. And it was nothing to do with Matt's produce. It's really great. It was just my schedule in getting there to pick stuff up. But I think this is all kind of unfortunate because there was misinformation and certainly concern on the part of the commissioners about our water supply, which was all valid. But I just think this was an opportunity for Matt to see what a difference he's made in so many people's lives and how important this agriculture is in town. The people who are doing these working farms are really working hard, struggling, you know, as many people working in town are, but it's something that we're really lucky that we have it here in Falmouth. And it's nice that this area will be preserved.
Excellent. Courtney? Courtney Bird, are you there?
Courtney's, you're on mute.
No, I'm not.
You
Do you
were,
have any
now you
comment?
are again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
Now you're muted, Courtney.
All right, I'm moving on. Kevin? Kevin
Now
O'Brien?
it's there. Is that better?
Yes,
Yes.
Courtney.
All right, I'll start again. I was one of the ones who supported the concept of the amendment to require organic certification. And I think as I agree with Maury, particularly that this is a desirable goal. But preserving farmland and this kind of an operation is also extraordinarily important and probably supersedes a strict organic requirement. Farming has to be preserved on Cape Cod. And frankly, I think that we, being humans, we made a wrong call in the last meeting, and I would like to make sure that it's the right call tonight.
Okay. We made a call based on the information we had. Kevin O'Brien?
I don't think I'll make any comments at this time. Thank you.
All right. Maury?
No comment.
Okay. Russ?
No comment.
Steve?
I'd like to thank all the people who took the time to express their views on this issue. And I appreciate the 300 committee and their lawyer revising the document so it reflects the actual conditions. And I will now support this.
Excellent. Yes, thank everyone for their due diligence. Mark, Pat, and Peter, I've deliberately skipped over you as alternates tonight. Jen, do we have any public comments or chats?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. So we have a motion and a second to accept as applied. I'm going to call for the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. It is accepted. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
Thank you.
Yes.
did we vote something this last week? Do we need to do anything with that CR that we voted last week?
Well, we didn't because we voted for the amendment, which was to require organic farming. And that passed, so that negates the acceptance of the certificate. So that's been taken out of the equation, if you will, with the corrected information. So tonight, we do not have any amendment attached to it. So we just voted for the application as presented.
Just to clarify, Steve, we have nothing to do with the conservation restriction.
I know.
Yep. Just so the commission knows, you have a chat from Pariah Dog Farm and they said, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, moving on. We're going to vote minutes August 5th, 2020. Anybody?
I read them and found them to be in order. Hawks.
Patton, second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as written. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Oops. Gray, aye.
Maury?
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. The minutes are accepted as written. Thank you, Susan. Next up, requests for determination of applicability. First up, Paula A. and Richard F. Sete, 64 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove existing concrete patio, install dry wells, and to install pavers. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy?
Gladfelter, I.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Mark?
Ernie, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Russ?
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Robert McCormick, 93 T-Ticket Path, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to remove an 8-foot section of railing on the south side of the dock in order to construct a ladder on the dock. Kevin?
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a +3 under the state and a +5 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawk, second.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe the applicant would like to address the board. I'm promoting Mr. McCormick up as a panelist.
Okay.
As you've read in your staff report, excuse me, Kevin, I'm just going to jump in here. The board put this condition on because during the original hearing, we wanted to see either a T-section or L at the end of this dock, but because of the congestion in that area, the board decided to allow for that straight dock. So that the condition went in that railing needed to be installed to prevent the two boats being on that dock. So I have promoted Mr. McCormick up, and I do believe he wants to address the board.
Yes,
McCormick,
thanks,
you're
Jim.
up.
Yeah, he's here, Mr. Chairman.
Hi, good evening. This is my first time actually participating in a meeting with the Conservation Commission. We had a dock, so please forgive any rookie mistakes I might make. We have a dock that was put in 2015. We hadn't used it until this year. We had a boat in a private slip that we sold last year, and now we're starting to use this dock. It is a straight dock. The north side is where the mooring field is currently located. What my wife and I are trying to do, or asking for permission to do, is we want to be able to launch kayaks or paddle boards from the dock. Currently, launching these paddle boards or kayaks from the shoreline, there's quite a bit of seagrass there. So we've got over a 14-foot area of water on the south side that's abuts our property that we would have access to. And we're simply, right now, we're prevented from using that area at all. And it would be, what we're asking for permission for is to remove that railing that's currently there, add a ladder, and the access or the ability to access paddle boards and kayaks. That's what we're looking to do. I'm not sure if there are any questions from any of the commissioners for us.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a letter that has been requested to be read into the record.
Okay.
You've all received it, but this particular, they just sent a chat asking that it be read. So you did all receive it. To the Falmouth Conservation Committee, we, Matt and Brenda Sleeper, have concerns pertaining to the second agenda item on the August 12th meeting. and then it was this agenda item. As residents of 95 T-Ticket Path and a direct abutting neighbors to the McCormick's, we object the motion for them to remove this section of railing to develop the south side of their dock. We are opposed to their currently proposed request for the following reasons. One, the proximity to our Chapter 91 licensed mooring field. See pictures below, taken June 25th, and July 6th of 2020, showing that the requested south railing had already been cut with a motorized boat, a bought inflatable dock, and south-facing cleats. Location of the motorized boat, access to the south side conflicts with and impedes access to our mooring field. And two, safety of both parties and properties. The south railing cut is directly abutting our mooring field. The position of the motorized boat is shown in the image, and you all got this email. The inflatable dock, if access through the south side railing cut, place both parties and property in significant danger due to the close proximity to our mooring field and boat propellers. We ask that you approve the approval for the McCormick's dock reconstruction granted in 2014 during the Conservation Commission hearing on January 29, 2014. The commission reviewed the initial plan set and determined that the McCormick's dock and mooring field should be designed to be utilized from the north side as to not impede the use of either respective mooring fields by the Sleepers or McCormick's. The decision was made due to the quote-unquote cozy nature and close proximity of our docks. The recording of the hearing referencing this particular discussion is located below. Please review the minutes between 5:40 and 31. After the initial review, the revised plan was presented to the Conservation Commission during the February 12, 2014 hearing, and the McCormick's dock was conditionally approved with the requirement that the south side double railing be added to discourage the development and access to the south side of the McCormick's dock. The dock plan was voted and approved during the February 26, 2014 meeting.
There is no motorized boat on the south side of our, there's no motorized boat on our dock at all right now. So, it may have been there for a day or so, but it's not there now. And I believe Alyssa was out there earlier in the week and can attest to that. As far as, what we're trying to do, we're trying to protect the seagrass on the shoreline by accessing kayaks and paddle boards from the south side. We have over 14 feet of waterfront frontage there. Nothing is going to even come close to the Sleepers. What's the paddle board? 2 feet wide. So I think their concerns are in their own self-interest.
Are you done or you're having audio problems?
No, I'm all set.
All right, Jen, is there anything else we should address on this?
I'm looking at something.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. No, here I'm back. I have another chat. Mr. Sleeper says, I only disapprove of the location directly behind my mooring field and floating dock. So, like I said, Mr. Chairman, like Kevin said, we have to, because it is a condition in the order of conditions, the staff does need to recommend the positive.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, so staff's recommendation is for a positive finding, and this should come back as a notice, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Question answered.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any further public comments?
It doesn't appear so, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry?
No.
All right. I'm going to call for the vote again. This is for a positive finding. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, no.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, abstain.
abstained, you said?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 votes for to accept staff's recommendation. We have 1 negative and 1 abstention. Next up, Charles Breen, 18 Spartina Place, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to Vista prune according to FWR 10.18 10B. Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so moved.
Gladfelter
Hawks,
second.
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Next up, Mary Ann and Richard Bradshaw, trustees of Mary Ann Bradshaw Revocable Trust, 8 LCN Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to add a second floor addition to an existing house within the flood zone. Kevin,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Carlo Hawks, so moved.
anyone for a second?
Second,
Bird, second.
Sorry, who's second?
I seconded it.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It was unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Lori E. and John E. Cadigan, 11 BB Acres Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a small addition to an existing house within the flood zone. Kevin,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so moved.
Patton, second.
thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Jason Gezzing, 39 Davis Neck Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to Vista prune according to FWR 10.18 10B. Kevin,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
thank you.
Hawks, so moved.
Gladfelter, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Pat, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Russ and Elise Phillips, 105 Coonamessett Circle, East Falmouth, to Vista Prune according to FWR 10.18, 10B. Kevin,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter,
second.
second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Pat and aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Sawstick Family Management Trust, 448 Seacoast Shores Boulevard, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to renovate the existing single-family dwelling, construct a second floor addition, construct a balcony, and to install mitigation plantings. Kevin,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Carlo Hawks, second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. I want to ask, why is this not a notice?
I'll answer. So they have some self-imposed conditions that they're required to put in mitigation plantings before construction activities begin. They are to contact conservation agent to inspect, and they're to provide temporary above ground irrigation as well. And the mitigation is just above what we typically require for a notice, 105 square feet.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Gurney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat, Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Pat and aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. All right, next up, our request for hearing under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up is Bruno DeFazio, 41 Moonpenny Lane, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a single-family dwelling with all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I promoted Mr. Borselli up to present the project.
Thank you. Mr. Borselli,
Mr.
whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen, Mr. Chairman.
Please do.
So hopefully you're seeing a site plan of number 41 Moonpenny Lane. Number 41, also known as Lot 1 Moonpenny Lane, is a developed lot with water frontage on Bourne's Pond Wetland resources include a salt marsh, a bordering vegetated wetland on one side on the southeast, an eroding coastal bank, low profile but eroding, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. All the associated node disturbance zone A's and outer buffer zone B's are depicted on the plan. And the project has been designed to conform with your regulations, more specifically, your resource area buffer regulations found at 10.18. And that was accomplished by designing the house, custom designing the house and dimensions and shape of the house such that they result in all proposed activities being outside of all on A. In this case, the most restrictive resource area is salt marsh with almost a close second by the coastal bank. There's some areas where they almost are superimposed, but then there's an area where the salt marsh is more restrictive. So some work is done in the outer buffer zone A. You can see the outer buffer zone, B, I should say, from BVW. And in this case, the outer buffer zone from the coastal bank is 25 feet because the no disturbance zone is 75. You'll also see that there's a boundary of an AE12 and a VE14 in blue. And then you'll also note that the 25-foot Falmouth Wetland Resource Velocity Zone line is a black dashed line. And the house was custom designed to be outside of the velocity zone. In addition to that, the house has been designed to maintain a 10-foot separation at its closest point from the limit of work. The limit of work is shown along the boundary of the no disturbance zone A, and it wraps around on the property line on this side, and then it wraps around to create an envelope around all of the proposed activities. The septic system and reserve area have been located as far as possible from the wetland resources and outside, in all cases, 100 feet from any wetland resources. It's also been designed to conform to Title V in the Town of Falmouth health regulations. It has a 4-bedroom capacity. Since the house is in AE 12, we show the first floor elevation is at 15.9. There's no basement allowed, below grade space allowed in the form of a basement in this building, and it's been designed accordingly. There's a driveway that leads out to Moonpenny Lane. There's proposed dry wells for roof runoff. So we work very closely with the owner to design this house to fit the site as it relates to your regulations. I am aware from the staff report that there were a couple of issues that we're willing to certainly address and continue the hearing in order to give you a little bit more information. And what those issues are, first, the lot is completely wooded. So for that reason, we didn't do a tree survey. I mean, there's tens, probably over 100 trees on the lot. But we also are sensitive to the concerns about trees nearby to the limit of work. So there was a recommendation that we locate the trees that are within 25 feet of the limit of work, just so that they're on record. And so they can be preserved. So we're happy to survey locate those trees, submit a revised plan to satisfy the concerns of the staff. There was also a question about where that I should say there's no footpath shown on the plan. We didn't show a footpath to the water on the plan because there hasn't really been a lot of thought put into where the footpath may be. There's a light understory. There'd certainly be no need to cut trees to provide a footpath. You would anticipate that any footpath would meander through the trees and only be limited to a 4-foot width. But if you would like us to show a footpath, we're happy to, pick a spot that makes sense to show it on the plan. Final issue that was in the staff report was relative to a specific provision of 10.18. In my narrative, I quoted the section of the regulations that says, and I'll paraphrase it, no mitigation buffer plantings shall be required for work within Zone B where the existing natural vegetation meets the resource area distances for the notice of Zone A. So our project has done that. But an improvement must be provided. So we described but did not show on the plan an improvement that would include planting native plantings in and around the limit of work, along the boundary of the limit of work, so that there be a permanent definition of the boundary of the limit of work. It's difficult at times to come up with improvements on an undeveloped lot, but that section of your regulations specifically speaks to suggested improvements, and one of them is native landscaping. So that's what we propose to do. So those improvement plantings are not shown on the plan either. And we can certainly continue the hearing and show those improvement plans. I think that sums it up. I think we've designed this site with the regulations in mind and did our best. I think we accomplished conformity with all of your regulations, and I'm here to answer questions.
Thank you, Mike. Jen and/or Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we just wanted to be, fairly consistent with the last project on Moon Penny, where we had them survey right around that limit of work for the trees. We do like to see the paths put on the plans, even if a meandering path, just so the board, when you approve the plan, know that a path is going in. We can always work with the applicant on the siting. It doesn't have to be exactly as it is on the plan. We can always have another, a revised plan submitted with the new location, so we can work with them on that. And, we should know what the plantings are going along that fence line. And there was, it is in the Bournes Pond overlay. So I have been, contacted by some commissioners about the possibility of a denite, but that happened, putting in a denitrifying septic system. Mike, have you talked to your client about that at all, given it's Bournes Pond?
We have not. I have not spoken to my client about it.
Okay.
No.
Well, maybe like when you, you'll have to the hearing. So if you could have that discussion with your client, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Gonna open up to comments. Let's start with Russ.
Yeah, I'd like to see that footpath drawn on there, like Jen says. That's I think we've done that with other projects we've seen. Other than that, I'm pretty good with it.
All right. Steve?
Yeah, the staff took the low hanging fruit again. But there are two items were very important for this project, the trees and the path.
Thank you. Betsy?
Those were my concerns too. So thank you to the staff for articulating them.
Excellent.
And solution.
Courtney?
I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Kevin?
No comments.
Mark?
I think Mr. Marcelli has done a wonderful job squeezing this house off into the upper corner of the lot where it does avoid most of our concerned areas. I think he should be commended for that.
Thank you.
Duly noted. Maury?
The only concern I had, obviously staff's concerns were mine as well, but in our regulations, there is supposed to be shown an improvement. And if they do put the line of shrubbery in an already heavily vegetated area, then they get moved closer to 10 feet closer to the building, which usually we don't allow that as mitigation or improvement. And the only thing I would like to say is this is the Bournes Pond coastal overlay, and I think an improvement with this body of water, which is stressed out with nitrogen. And I'm hoping Mr. Borselli does ask the applicant to pursue a D-night system here. Nitrogen moves 1 foot a day. We know that for a fact. So I think the project otherwise is very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat? You're muted.
I have no comments, thanks.
Thank you. Peter?
My comment is I thought there was a requirement to have on the drawings the number of trees intended to be removed from the protected area and the number or inches of diameter of trees to be removed. Is that still in effect?
Can I speak to that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Or I'm happy to defer to Jen, but I'll just throw in my 2 cents. My understanding is that that applies to redevelopment. When you may be redeveloping a previously disturbed resource area buffer, more importantly within the A zone, and there may be some select trees that be moved in the altered buffer and to itemize them and quantify their number and size and then mitigate for the removal. In this case, all of the trees that are proposed to be removed are the no disturbance zone B, and there's a significant number of them. We can estimate how many, but there's no requirement to mitigate for the removal of those trees.
I was not saying that it had to be mitigated, but to be on record for how many trees would be impacted by this project. Jen, what's your input?
Well, Peter, usually, this is a very heavily treed lot, so would it take, we know trees are gonna have to be removed. I feel that it's more important for a survey to be done within 25 feet of that limit of work, so that, the trees that are supposed to be remaining on the lot in that no disturbance zone A, we clearly know where they are, and so that if they do, if they are removed, we have a better understanding of where they were. You understand what I'm saying? So I have no concerns with where the trees being removed where the house is. My concern would be, because there's so many of them, it's a heavily treed lot. My concern would be having that swath of trees surveyed along that limit of work line for future potential disturbance.
Okay, I agree. And I agree with some other commissioners' comments, like Mike did a good job of pushing the house in the low disturbance area. No more comments.
Thank you. All right. Jen, do we have any public comments or chat?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, so are we looking for a continuance for the revised plan?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Borselli, is that your official request?
Yeah, I think I can accomplish this and get it done by next Wednesday, which would be 1 week prior to the hearing that you're having on August 26th. So if it's acceptable, I'd request a continuance to August 26th.
I'd just like to tell the board, you have a number of hearings already scheduled, new notices for the 26th. I think it's either 4 or it could be up to 5 by now. And we also have 2 continued notices that you have not heard yet, as well as another continuance. So if the board, and we have an update on the Peterson farm. So the 26th is fairly busy. If the board wants to squish this on there, we can, but I just want to let the board know what we're up against on the 26th.
What's the next
available
date?
After that would be the 2nd.
Mike, could you live with the 2nd?
Hesitantly, I could, there's a purchase and sale agreement pending that is going to get tricky. There'll be a need to probably get an extension to the purchase and sale. I assume it'd be a formality. We went on the 26th, but if you feel as though you're overburdened, I'm not going to argue with you about that. I mean, I'd rather have the 26th, but we could live with the 2nd if we needed to.
Thank you, Mike. Excuse me, Jen, this would just be accepting the revised plan, correct?
Correct.
As Mr. Borselli said, more of a formality, and you'd have the opportunity to review it ahead of time, correct?
Correct.
Well, we all would, really. Okay. So I don't know what everybody thinks, but I think we're okay with throwing it on an already long night.
I can live with it.
Okay.
Are you going to look into the D-Night, Mike?
I'm gonna speak to my client about it. Yes, I can't commit, and I might have him speak to it after I talk to him.
I think if it's small revision, we could probably handle it on the 26th.
Okay.
I'll
Is that a
make
I
motion?
don't want any of you complaining on the 26th now.
It's going to be
I'll
a
be brief.
no matter what.
I'll
Yes,
be
it
very
is.
brief.
We appreciate that. All right, do we have a,
At the request of the applicant, we'll continue this to August 26th, Harlow Hawks.
Bird, second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to continue until 8:26 for a very brief moment, right, Mike?
Very brief, yes.
Uh-huh. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve. It is unanimous. We are continued this hearing until 8:26.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Borselli. All right, before we reach the next one, I want to acknowledge the attendance of our select person, Sam Patterson, and our administrative support, Amy Coughlin. Next up, Francis M. Keegan, 42 Deer Run Lane, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to rebuild existing steps, to extend a stone wall, to conduct invasive species management, to replace invasive species with beach grass, and to install mitigation plantings.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until September 2nd. I want to address some of the staff's comments in our comment letter, so be happy to work with them.
So
Bird, at the request of the applicant, I move we continue this to the 2nd of September.
Carlo Hawk second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue until September 2nd. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Rooney, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk's aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. This hearing is continued until 9/2. Next up, continued hearings under notice of intent. First one, Wendy Hill and Susan Condon, 268 Surf Drive, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install a tight tank wastewater holding tank and to abandon the existing cesspool.
Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Mike Borselli, Stan Humphreys from ECR, and I believe Brian Wall up to, I guess, present the project. or
Okay,
Address
I wanna-
it. This is
I want to clarify the quorum. Myself, I am recused. Pat Harris is recused, and Mark Gurney has been brought up as a voting member. With that, who did you say, Jen?
nothing. Just this is a continued hearing. They wanted to add some additional information for the record.
Thank you. Who do we have up?
Good evening, Mayor. It's Brian Wall representing the applicants. Just a
Mr.
information before I start. May I ask Jen to also promote Stan Humphreys? He should be in the waiting room as well.
I did, Brian. I have you, Stan, and Mike.
Okay, thanks. When we join, there's a momentary lapse, so I didn't hear that part. Thank you.
No worries.
Okay, so through the chairman, we did ask for a continuance. For the record, I'm Brian Wall. I'm an attorney. I represent the applicants in this case, Wendy Hill and Susan Condon. And together with me tonight is Mike Borselli of Falmouth Engineering and Stan Humphreys of Environmental Consulting and Restoration. We had a full hearing and we requested a continuance because we received the staff report just prior to the hearing, and we would like and ask for the opportunity to review it and to respond to that. And we also wanted to respond to a couple of comments from some of the commissioners. And so I'm just going to dive right in. The first comment that we wanted to respond to was a comment that arose from a letter that Mrs. Hill submitted as part of the application. In it, you might recall, she mentioned that fumes from the incinerating toilet were unpleasant and noxious. And she said that her neighbor might use and also connect to the tight tank because the neighbor complained about the fumes. In retrospect, neighbor probably wasn't the right word, and it led to some confusion. This particular property is owned in what's called tenants in common, and that is a legal term regarding how real estate can be held, the title. And in this case, a tenants in common means that two or more persons can own an interest in property, and they don't have to be related like married people. So in this case, Wendy Hill owns 50% of the property, and the co-applicant, Susan Condon, owns 50%. And I would submit to the commission that they're better described as co-owners and not as neighbors. And the proposed tight tank, I know that Mr. O'Brien had some concerns that if we were offering it as some sort of service to connect neighboring properties. That is not the case. The tight tank will only serve the property at issue 268 Surf Drive. So I just wanted to clarify that. Moving on, the staff report had two primary comments that we wanted to address. The first of which is one concerning consistency with prior decisions. And we did discuss this briefly during the last hearing. The staff report recommends remaining consistent with previous decisions on Surf Drive, and specifically mentioned the property at 410 Surf Drive. Coincidentally, the team before you tonight, Mike Borselli, Stan Humphreys, and myself, happened to represent the applicant at 410 Surf Drive. And it was only a few months ago, so I'm sure the commissioners recall hearing much of the evidence in that case. In that particular case, the applicant was proposing to reconstruct a bathhouse, and part of the project included proposing abandonment of an existing cesspool that was used for gray water and to install a tight tank. However, a decision was never made in that case because the notice of intent was withdrawn after some questions arose regarding zoning code and parking requirements. And since the NOI was withdrawn without prejudice, there was no decision on that matter. Now, I know that staff said during the last hearing that what was meant by the report were that the staff had made comments in 410 Surf Drive against approval of that tight tank. And that is true. We agree with that statement. However, I think it's important to recognize that there are 7 members on the commission, and since there was never a vote on that matter, we don't know what the outcome was going to be, and therefore there was no decision in 410 Surf Drive. Having said that, the commission has made a decision on 322 Surf Drive, which is a property about 500 feet to the east. And I submitted a letter, and I've included this information for your consideration. In that particular case, back in April of 2019, the owner of the property proposed abandonment of a cesspool and installation of a tight tank. And they proposed it under a request for determination of applicability. And after reviewing the project, the commission granted a negative determination. And so I respectfully argue, I respect the staff's comments, but I respectfully argue to the commission that in order to be consistent, the commission should actually approve this project because that's what it did on 322 Surf Drive. The second comment that was made in the staff report has to do with FWR 10.03 and the siting requirements for septic systems. And there are basically two sub-comments in the second comment. The first is there's a statement that there can be no new wastewater systems permitted in a beach or a velocity zone. And secondly, there can be no expansion of use. And I want to kind of break those down and take them one step at a time. So the first response that we have is that a tight tank by definition cannot be a new system. And so therefore there is not a new system proposed in a beach or a velocity zone. I've included all of this in my letter, but under the Title V definitions and regulations, tight tanks are deemed to be a septic system. There's no doubt about that. However, but by definition, an approval of a tight tank may only be granted to eliminate a failed on-site system. And that is what's proposed in this case. There's an existing cesspool on the property, and the proposal is to eliminate it and replace it with the tight tank. So insofar as the first comment is made about no new wastewater systems, this is not a new system, and therefore it is not prohibited by 10.03. The second subpart of that second comment is that there cannot be an expansion of use, and staff felt that this might be an expansion of use. So specifically in 10.03, the language states the following. The setback requirements shall be required for any enlargement of a system which accompanies the enlargement of an existing building or expanded scope of use. The applicant's contention is that this building is not being expanded and the use of the building is not being changed. And we have 3 arguments that are brief why this is not an expansion of use. The first argument goes to what's called the plain meaning of the language. Whenever a court or a body such as the commission is required to interpret some language, the go-to first rule is you use the words that are in the common definitions of the words in the regulation. And we would submit to you that currently permitted is a cesspool accepting gray water plus an incinerating toilet that burns off black water. This project is approved. A tight tank will accept and contain both gray water and black water. A licensed hauler will then pump out that system when it becomes full and take it away to a licensed treatment facility. So I know that Commissioner Harlow Hawks last time made clear that the Falmouth Wetlands regulations regulate environmental concerns, not public health concerns. But I would respectfully submit to the board that if this project is approved, there'll be no discharge into the air or into the ground. and the waste will be treated at a licensed facility. So that therefore there's no expansion of the current use. The second and third arguments, I'm going to deviate from what's called the plain meaning rule and go to arguments by analogy. And I turn towards zoning and Title V. These are other well-known land use regulations. And I would suggest that when the commission drafted the wetlands regulations, it was aware of zoning and Title V. So zoning regulates uses of land. We're all familiar that you can't have a concrete plant next to a neighborhood or a gas station in a neighborhood. And it also regulates changes of use. And so, for instance, if this was a change from a single family to a multifamily or a commercial property, zoning would consider that to be a change of use. And the new zoning, current zoning regulations would apply to that. However, if there's no change or expansion of use, then it would be considered to be the same as it was before. And in this particular instance, I think the way that zoning would look at this is it's a single family or bathhouse now. It will be exactly the same thing if the commission were to approve this project. And so therefore, from a zoning perspective, there'd be no expansion of use. Similarly, under the state sanitary code, we think that there's no expansion of use. I'm sure the commission, although you regulate wetlands, are familiar with Title V. Title V requires septic systems to have capacity sufficient for the building that they serve. And in residential context, that capacity is based upon flow into the system measured by the number of bedrooms. And specifically, it requires 110 gallons per day per bedroom in the structure. Any intensification of use, for example, an addition of a bedroom, would require an increase in capacity or design flow of the system. And now Title V has provisions that are very similar to 10.03 when it comes to replacing an existing system. In the case of replacing an existing system in Title V, it allows an upgrade of that system without any increase in flow to be performed, even if it doesn't meet current requirements. Title V uses the word or phrase maximum feasible compliance. So if you have an existing system and you have a cesspool or a failed septic system, you are allowed to upgrade that system, even if you can't comply with all the setbacks, but you can't increase the flow. Any increase in flow has to meet current code. And that's exactly how 10.03 is written. You're allowed to replace an existing system without requiring meeting the site setback requirements. If you expand the use, then you must meet the site requirements. And here is the point that I want to make. Under Title V, a tight tank can never be approved for new construction or for any increase in flow. And so if you look at the plain meaning of the regulation, you look at it from a zoning perspective or from a Title V perspective, there is no change or expansion of use of this property, and therefore there's no expansion of use of the septic system. So I think that what we've done here is we've respectfully shown that the comments, I hope we've successfully rebutted the comments that are set forth in the staff report, and we would ask for your favorable consideration of the project. I would like to yield, I'm available for any questions regarding that, but I'd like to yield the floor briefly to have Stan Humphries say a couple of words about the performance standards.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Stan Humphries with ECR. I was retained as a coastal geologist and viewed the site on August 3rd. And then I also reviewed Mike's plan and his NOI. In a letter dated August 4th, I went through the existing conditions, the proposal, and basically confirmed that I believe under the coastal dune regulations, the project complies. That's my brief presentation. I believe you all have a copy of the letter. If you have any questions, we have the answer.
Thank you. Jen and or Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to clarify a few things that Brian had said and to respectfully disagree with him. 322 Surf Drive had a cesspool that was already hooked up and was receiving black water. So it was already functioning It had already been hooked. It was already receiving the black water from the toilet. Staff's recommend, so that was a determination, not a decision, but a determination by the board. You issued that negative determination, and that was fine. Staff, you know, we agreed with that. In the case of 410 Surf Drive, and in this case, well, more specifically, this case, staff does, I do believe that this is an expanded use of this cesspool and of this system, because currently there is no black water going into that cesspool. So we would be putting a structure in a concrete structure with the tight tank in it, in a barrier beach and a coastal dune, accepting sewage. And so staff is going to, you know, repeat that we do feel that going from just a gray water system to a black water system is an expanded use. And now with the hookup of an additional bathroom, you know, that's how we view the regulations. We do have concerns with putting a concrete structure in a coastal dune, in a velocity zone, and in a barrier beach. So our comments really haven't changed since the last time. I just wanted to clarify that 322, there was a difference between use of that system and the use of this current cesspool. Oh, and we don't look at things from a zoning or Title V perspective. We look at it from our own regulations.
All right. Open it up to commission comments. Kevin, we're going to start with you.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mark?
Well, I think as I said last time, I see no environmental impact on this. This is an immense structure. It's not going to move. It's sealed. It's not going to emit any sewage into the environment. It's right next to the road. If there's enough storm energy or activity to do anything to this immense tank, the road will be long gone. I don't think there's, again, any negative impact to this project.
All right, thank you. Maury?
Couple concerns I've always had, and I still have. I think in the ECR report, since 2009, 7 feet of accretion since, I'm sorry, 2009, which is approximately 6 feet a year. Hurricane Bob was 1991. And if we all can remember that date, all those buildings, most of them were washed away, quite a few of them, which is why this one's elevated. That dune, just like the sewer line that's on the bike path, has been impacted by storms. And this tank is just as vulnerable, of opinion on that. But as you know, where I stand, and the Cinelette toilet, I think they should investigate through the Barnstable County that they've been very successful.
All right. Peter?
I agree with Mark. No further comments.
All right. Russ?
I'd much rather see it underneath the dune than a composting tank underneath the structure itself. And again, I'll state again, I've worked on those Cinelettes before. So I'm familiar with them, Lori.
All right. Steve?
Yeah, I have reached the conclusion that Mark's view, and I support that.
All right. Betsy?
So I want to go to Maury's view. Our job is to protect the environment, and you can't really look at a barrier beach and look what happens 999 days. You have to look at what happens on the 1000th day when a major storm comes. And I put into the record this week the Massachusetts Barrier Beach Task Force report, which was done by, well, it was a task force that was commissioned by Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management. And I just want to read a couple of sections from it. One is, when considering the importance of overwatch episodes, the entire barrier profile, including its readjustment, must be considered. A barrier profile includes not only the portion of the barrier which can be seen, but also the seaward area out to the wave base or closure point. Wave base is the seaward most depth where sediment movement occurs under normal day-to-day or storm wave action. Along the eastern seaboard, the 27-foot bathymetric contour is a representative wave base under severe storm conditions. So if there's a major storm, basically this barrier beach is going to be turned into, and you've all done this at the beach, you're going to turn it into a liquid. It's going to be, you know, when you walk on the beach and you make your foot, you stamp your foot and it puddles up. This entire barrier beach is going to be in that condition. And what's going to happen is, if this tight tank is put in and any structures like that, basically it's going to be like having additional groins. There are already groins there, but additional groins. These structures are going to stay when the barrier beach moves landward. So the last paragraph I want to read is, many times the usual human response to overwashes and the resultant shoreline retreat and flooding is to build seawalls, groins, or other hard structures in an attempt to protect the beach. Well, here we're putting hard structures into this beach. Unfortunately, these alterations, along with paving, like the road that Mark referenced, and bulldozing, interfere with natural processes of barrier beach. They prevent overwash and interference with beach grass and dune growth, contribute to erosion in surrounding areas. These disturbances are damaging to the system as a whole. Once the natural beach and dune rebuilding processes are interrupted, the barrier beach defenses against future storms are diminished. In an attempt to stabilize the barrier beach through armoring, such as building a seawall or revetment, or I would argue putting in these tanks, the beach areas adjacent to and in front of the armoring erode or scour at an accelerated rate and may entirely disappear over time. So I'm not in favor of putting this in when this is really a temporary house. And that's all I have to say, Jamie.
Thank you. Courtney.
A lot of what my thinking has already been said. First of all, I support Jen's interpretation of this. I believe it is an expanded use because for a number of years, basically the owners abandoned the dual part of that septic or cesspool, which included black water and gray water. Basically what they did is to eliminate the black water with their incinerating toilet. So therefore, by putting in this tank and reintroducing sewage, essentially, in my view, is an expanded use. So that's a very narrow thing. And I strongly support that. And I understand, Brian, that you're pointing out that we allowed a tight tank in another location, but there are also locations along Surf Drive where we didn't allow it, and all you have are porta johns. And the other thing is, I'm older than most of you, but I didn't remember the 1938 hurricane, but I did live through 1954 and most recently Hurricane Bob. And in those storms, those houses along Surf Drive, with perhaps a couple of exceptions, ended up on the other side of Salt Pond. And if you walk down Surf Drive, Betsy pointed out that the road became liquefied. What happens is the water drives under the road And so the asphalt floats on top. And that road, we're expecting a significant sea level rise over the next few years. I've seen predictions as much as 5 feet by 2050. Much of that beach will be underwater. So I would go along with what Betsy says. This is temporary down there. And I realize that those structures have been grandfathered and that's why they're there. If people wanted, if there were no structures there and people came along and wanted to build, they wouldn't be allowed to. And I think we have to be really stringent on this, on development. And again, I come back to the point, and I respectfully disagree with Brian. It is an expanded use because they're now introducing black water. And the fact is, there are enough technological advances to make composting toilets perfectly usable. And so there's a viable alternative that already exists to a tight tank. I don't have anything else to say, but I will not support this.
Thank you. Jen, are there any public comments?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, what's your pleasure, folks?
Could I respond to some of what Mrs. Gladfelder said?
Who is it?
This is Stan.
It's Mr. Humphries.
Okay, go ahead.
Stan, can you put your video on?
I'd prefer not to, if it's all right. There's two things to consider here with respect to Barrier Beach hazards. One is erosion, the other is flooding. Sometimes one of those are going to prevail over the other. Other times they combine for the hazard. In this location and all along Surf Drive, there has never been a shoreline close to the road, including any of the homes, since 1800. This gives coastal zone management and their statistical analysis of mean high water shorelines the basis to show that the long-term erosion rate along here is about minus 0.2 feet per year. That to me indicates a fairly stable barrier beach physically. Now, to consider the comments made about hurricanes, Hurricane Bob, the process, the actual mapping out there now of V-zone at elevation 15. That's a 100-year flood that's going to provide 10 feet of vertical water going over the site and over the road. I would bet, I'm not positive, that those houses that washed into Salt Pond didn't meet FEMA standards and were flooded off their foundation, not eroded from their foundations. So this structure below grade, I think, is safe from flooding. The flooding will overtop it, and it's safe from erosion in the long-term sense.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
I just say one sentence too. I do really sincerely appreciate the concern that Ms. Gladfelter has expressed and Mr. Berg. But it just seems to me that all of those concerns are already present because there's already a structure and there's already an existing cesspool. And we're really kind of swapping one out for the other. I just don't see any expansion of use there.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I want clarification from Mr. Humphries, because he said that it's de minimis, it's only 0.2 feet per year, yet in his report, he says has experienced, and this is on the front page, has experienced 17 feet of accretion since 2009 at a rate of 0.6 feet per year. So is it, which is it?
Well, that would be the short-term change in the location of mean high water. Since 2009, there actually has been a seaward movement of the beach. It's accretion. Now, if we factor in some of the larger events or changes, I have the shoreline change map in front of me. In the long term, that erosion will take that accretion away. So in other words, we have a fluctuating shoreline that goes through phases of erosion and accretion, but over the long term, it's an erosion. I can't deny that, but it's only a minus 0.2 feet per year.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman. Oh,
Yes,
Yeah, I would like to put my CD into the record as well, Jamie.
okay.
And then I'd also like to make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird, second.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Are there any further comments from the board? All right, hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. The hearing is closed. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Very much for your time.
thank you.
All right, next up. Frank and Donna Skelly, 369 Edgewater Drive West, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to raise RAZE, an existing single-family dwelling, and to construct a new single-family dwelling, to add a new Title V septic system, and to reconfigure the driveway.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until September 16th. Correct, Mike?
The request. At the request.
Maury, you're frozen. No, here she goes again. You're back, Maury. Nope, you're frozen again.
I'll make a motion.
Somebody else can do it.
At the request of the applicant, I make a motion to continue this to 9/16.
Bird, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until 9/16. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks,
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. This hearing is continued until 9/16. Thank you. All right. Next up is request to amend the existing order conditions. Robert Richards, 45 Little Neck Bars Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to install an additional concrete slab area or to install a series of wood frame deck panels beneath the structure and to install bayberry plants. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We continued this so that the applicant could make revisions to the plans. Mr. Burselli is been sitting quietly as a panelist while we went through other things and will be presenting his revision to you.
Okay. Mr.
Thank you,
Borselli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
Mike?
Yes,
Mike, before we begin,
yes.
can I just confirm something? So I'm doing the form sheet. So this question is to Jen. So Jen, I have two quorum sheets for this, two quorum sheets with different DEP numbers. So I just want to confirm I'm doing the right one. Should I be 4292?
Hang on. 4292, I believe is the correct one. Wait a minute. Yes. Is that right, Mike?
Yes.
4292.
Okay. So the other one I don't need, right? You're gonna do just do
No.
about one, right?
Yeah, we just need 4292.
Okay, got it.
Hey, Betsy, what do you have for quorum?
Courtney, Kevin, Maury, Betsy, Jamie, Russ, Steve, Peter, Pat, Mark.
Who
Everybody.
don't you?
We have everybody. Everybody likes to get together on Wednesday night.
Yes, we do. Without further ado, Mr. Borselli, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Michael Borselli again. I represent the applicant, Bob Richards. This is a continuance of an amended hearing from a few weeks ago. Subsequent to that hearing, receiving feedback, issues raised, questions, concerns from the commission and staff. We had a second site visit with Jen on site to review things. We left the meeting and revised the plans, and submitted new revised plans in a cover letter to summarize the revisions. I'll summarize those to you now. First off, we're all aware of the snow fencing that was installed on the beach, the upper beach, just seaward of the coastal dune. We added that to the plan. We're respectfully asking for after the fact permission to allow that to be in place as it is. In your record, we also filed a support letter from the 300 committee that I'll just read the last paragraph. We are in favor of the installation of signage and fencing to help prevent excess traffic on the dunes. So we humbly are saying that, yes, we should have asked permission. It is installed, we're asking for after the fact permission. And the same goes for the stairs. The stairs, which I'm zooming in on, I have to share the screen with your permission, Mr. Chairman.
Please do.
These access stairs that lead from the house along a path over the stone revetment and dune down to the beach were rebuilt in the same footprint. They were improved slightly, more stable. They were becoming quite unsafe and susceptible to some damage or collapse. So the contractor rebuilt as in kind. We can't demonstrate that permission was received. So we're asking for after the fact permission for those to remain as they were rebuilt. To the main topic of why we were requesting the amendment in the first place. And if you recall, we made a presentation, described the scenario of the area below the elevated house. If you recall, this is a house that was elevated, reconstructed in the FEMA standards. The underside is completely open, pile supported. And the original concept when everything was designed and permitted was that the areas to the north and south of the main core of the house, those
Mike, did you just mute yourself? We just lost your audio.
Looks like he froze.
Am I back?
Mike, you're back.
I don't know what happened, but I'm gonna go fast because I don't know why I did.
No, can you go back?
It's a time
Because,
limit.
Oh,
can you start that again? We missed part of your presentation.
all right. So I was speaking to the sand colored areas to the north and south of the main core of the house. We had originally requested that we be allowed to expand the concrete slab in this area on the north side and then this area on the south side. There were issues and concerns raised by the commission. We revisited that, and as an alternative, we're asking permission to substitute clean wash crushed stone in a thickness that will allow for bluestone pieces to be inset to create stepping stones so that there is some stable area to walk around under the building in areas other than with the slab. The slab is the white color. This sand color on both sides right now, the wind is blowing through there. We had thought the sand would remain, that the dune would expand, and that we'd have a problem with too much sand. But because of the way that the dynamics of the wind are here, it blows under and through and scarifies and leaves a very sort of uneven, rocky, fragmented stone surface on both sides of the slab. So the crushed stone would be a stable bedding that would allow some bluestone stepping stones to be set in crushed stone, inlaid in dry laid, so that you could walk over the crushed stone. And there's already bluestone pieces used on the approach from the driveway up to the house, so it would be consistent with what was already reviewed and approved. And that sums it up. I'm happy to answer questions.
Excellent. Thank you. Jen?
Staff has no comments right now, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Maura, going to start with you.
Okay, couple things. When you said dry laid, Mike, I thought you were just setting them in the gravel.
That's what I mean. Yeah, just sort of embed them in the gravel so they're flush with the gravel surface, but dry laid, yes. And then just in a pattern that would allow you to step through, not a continuous surface of bluestone.
So basically, it's just step stones underneath, not a patio of bluestone.
Right, not a continuous patio. Yes, there'd be a bluestone, then be a gap of crushed stone, and then bluestone.
It would have been nice if you put that on the plan. It would have been helpful, because now we just have two areas shown, which are 1,200.
Maura, you're breaking up.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. There's almost 1,300 square feet underneath there, and you didn't depict on the plan like you did the walkway. So it would be nice if the stones were shown. Maybe you could just, that could be something you do with staff to show just that they're step stones.
Yes.
Blue pad underneath the building. Second thing, did the electrical line get addressed that goes through the DCPC area that has the orchids in it?
I was informed by Mr. Richards that he investigated it, and we suspect it is a Comcast cable line that Comcast is going to investigate. They do not believe it services his property. They're going to actually go to the property tomorrow and verify that it doesn't serve the applicant's property and go back. But that's all we know at the time. It's an overland cable that I only can see from the road, and we suspect it's an old cable television line.
It's not old. That was put in during that project. That's why I'm concerned. And it goes across two pieces of property as species.
We should have information about it soon. So, that's the best I can do. He couldn't get them to get there any sooner.
That's great. As long as you're still on it. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's all I have, as long as we're not doing concrete now.
Excellent. Pat, you're up.
I have a question about the prior order and the intent behind not allowing these two shaded areas to be impervious. When I was out there, it certainly looked like the dune had potential to creep under the house, and that perhaps was the reason that it was left pervious, so that the natural Barrier Beach dune would move inland.
I can speak to that. So that was the intent, and that was the theory that, in fact, we expected that there'd be too much sand. It would be more of an issue of having sand building up under the building, even on top of the concrete. But due to the velocity of the prevailing southwest winds, we've witnessed the sand actually, it migrates from the dune, and when it goes under the building, it's like a wind tunnel effect. There's such velocity that it just continues beyond the building, and it's actually building up east corner, and the dune is expanding on the northeast side of the building. It's not stable. It's not staying under the building. Nothing, no fine particulate will stay under the building. So it makes for a very uneven, difficult to walk through with bare feet, especially under the building. So this was a means to provide a more stable base without actually pouring concrete.
I'm just curious if something could be done to help stabilize the sand that's going through. I don't know much about this stuff, but you have those fences down by the dune on the beach to help build up the dune. Would something similar to that be done under the structure to realize the intent of the original order?
If you put fencing under the building, it would impede access under the building, so it would block your ability to sort of, walk under and around and gain access around the underside. We thought about putting snow fencing or vegetation outside on the northeast edge. That the vegetation doesn't seem to want to hold the sand, and it would just build up in a windrow like vegetation and not stay under the building. So couldn't really come up with a solution that would let the sand stay there. It wasn't really a design. It wasn't something that we were promoting for the building. It was something that we just expected would happen. Or we likely would have proposed concrete under the whole building. We expected the sand would stay.
And I also share Maury's concern that there's no detail provided for what is going to be crushed stone and what is going to be slab, and whether this would be almost ultimate concrete impervious barrier with primarily stone slabs.
Well, I can certainly provide a detail of that. That's not the intention.
Okay.
I think that would be helpful, Mike.
Mhm.
If you're going to be working with us, that would be helpful.
No other comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Peter?
Mr. Chairman, no questions.
All right. Russ?
No comments, questions.
Steve?
No comments or questions, Mr. Chairman.
Betsy?
I have all the information I need. Thanks for coming up with another creative solution between Jen and Mike.
This one was Mike. We were standing out there, and all of a sudden, it just like a light bulb.
We had an epiphany, yeah.
He was standing on one of the slabs out there and looked down and was like, hey.
We don't want to give Mike too many attaboys tonight.
No, I've got my quota, I think. I'm done, because the next one might be a little tougher if I had another one.
All right. You guys okay if I continue?
Yes.
Courtney,
Mike, what is it, 6 inches of 1.5 inch stone? Is that what you're proposing?
Yes.
And I would agree with the other comments that you need to diagram this so that we can see where you're placing the stones, and that assures that it doesn't end up as a solid bluestone patio. Other than that, I think it's a reasonable solution. I think in some respects, it may actually trap sand.
Yeah, some might get caught up in the voids of the crushed stone, you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, no other questions. Good solution.
Kevin,
No questions.
Mark,
I have no questions.
excellent. All right. What's your pleasure?
Let's make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Carlo Hawk, second.
All right.
We're gonna require a revised plan.
Well, with
You,
Jen, you're gonna go out, right? You guys are gonna go out and decide where they're gonna be, and then there'll be a revised plan.
I want to make sure the revised plan is part of the record. Order it.
Jen, you look confused.
Okay, so no, I got it. I just
Mm.
don't want a design to go out there and then the commission say this isn't what we envisioned, so that's why I'm kind of concerned.
Why are
Mike,
you-
there is no border around it, correct? There is no like wooden or stone or
No, it's gonna just taper.
holding that down,
It's gonna
raising that up,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
So let me ask you a question. How are they gonna transition from bluestone to that step? That concrete's a lot higher.
Well, we're gonna add 6 inches of crushed stone, which is, and then with the bluestone, it should become flush with the concrete.
Okay,
But there's a 6 inch reveal now in the concrete.
okay, it's only 6 inches?
Well, 6 inch.
There's nothing to restrain the stone.
That's what I'm saying. So what are you gonna put around the stone to keep it from just like,
Well, nothing. We were gonna just rake it at a taper and blend it into the sand. There's no need to put a permanent.
okay,
Does it make sense to continue and put this into the record so it's part of the order? Just putting it out there.
we could.
Have
I
you
think it
seen-
would be cleaner.
Yeah, truthfully,
Why don't we just put it on the 26th with everything else?
Well,
Ben, have you seen this revised plan?
Yeah, I have, but it doesn't have the what we're talking about, like that detailed part of
we
it.
don't have the pattern of the bluestone piece.
Yeah,
Okay.
Evidently described, but it
because
didn't.
Mike and I had a conversation today before the hearing that what I thought in the field was not what the revised plan was. So
We can continue and provide like a
I
detail.
think that would be best, Mike, just so I have a clear idea, so nothing gets kind of wonky with this one again.
Mhm.
At the request of the
I
applicant.
withdraw my motion, Carlo Hawk.
What, Maury?
Maury's withdrawing her motion to close.
Motion. Can we make a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue on the 26th.
No,
Third, second,
No,
no. September 2nd.
September 2nd.
Second? I make a motion to continue on until September 2nd.
Bird, second.
I thought it was gonna be the 26th.
it doesn't matter. James wants it on the 2nd. It can be on the 2nd.
We're getting buried on the 26th. Sorry, Mike, but
I understand.
we're getting buried.
I
So,
might actually even move Peterson Farm. over that day.
Summer's over. Summer's over.
so to be clear, we have a motion and a second to continue this for a revised plan until September 2nd.
Correct.
All right. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. This hearing is continued for a revised plan until September 2nd. Thank you, Mr. Borselli.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Night,
You as
Mike.
well.
Good night.
Oh, Mike, I do have you to stay. I need a clarification on your next agenda item.
Oh, okay.
Next up, request to extend the existing order of conditions. First item is Robert Richards, 45 Little Neck Bars Road, Falmouth, Mass, DEP number 25-4385. Request extension to October 8th, 2021.
So Mike, my question, and this is what I'm confused. When we talked about the extension for the amendment, is this the correct DEP number, or do you need it to be that 4292 DEP number?
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Yeah,
292.
so we're gonna have to re-advertise it. Okay. Is that okay, Mike?
Yeah.
We're gonna have to,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
you gave us the one, you gave us the 4385.
Yep. That's fine. We still
All right,
have
so can you
time.
withdraw this, Mike?
Yeah, and I'll just have to reissue the letter with the proper DEP file number.
Okay, can you do me a favor and request to withdraw this
Yeah,
request?
I hereby request to withdraw this application because it references the wrong DEP file number.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. We don't need to vote on that, correct?
No.
All right. Next up, Neil, so just for the record, the request to extend 45 has been withdrawn, officially withdrawn. So next up is Neil and Betty Watanabe, 8 Bridge Street, East Falmouth, Mass, DEP number 254359, requesting a 1-year extension.
Mr. Chairman, the staff recommends granting the 1-year extension.
So move.
Gladfelter,
Second,
Okay.
whatever.
But have any comments on this? All right, I'm calling for the vote. This is to grant a 1-year extension. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, have a good evening.
Thank you, Mike.
Night, Mike.
Good night.
Good night.
Next up, vote order conditions. First up, Terrence and Megan Rogers, 35 Rose Meadow Lane, Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was the, and I'm organizing papers here for a second.
Swimming pool, wasn't it, Jim?
Pool, yeah, this was the pool in the, near secondary coastal bank. I don't think there was any issues. John did a pretty good job getting it into the already impervious area, so mitigation wasn't required. Just your regular, standard conditions for the
Standard.
project.
Everybody good with that?
Make a motion to accept as discussed.
Carlo
Yeah,
Hawks,
second.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, Sandra Klein, 53 Bryant Point Road, North Falmouth, Mass.
A second, Mr. Chairman.
Beautiful cat, Courtney.
What's dinner?
Jen, this is the one for mitigation plantings.
No, I know,
I would
I'm
move
looking
order.
for my notes. Oh, I must have left them at the office. Okay, this was the mitigation planting one at 53 Bryant, where the mitigation plantings were put in at like the last minute. And then they asked for compliance and the plantings were all dead. So there's like over 50% of the plantings dead. So 53 Bryant, I had some notes written on that one.
Jen, there's also an invasive removal aspect where
Yep.
they just never planted and it was taken over. So that needs to be planted according to the original order.
Yep. Okay,
So-
so
We
my
want mo-
question is how the board would like to monitor this. Because that property is on the market, there's nobody living there. It's gonna have to be watered and maintained. And I really do think that given the history, you should have a 3-year monitoring requirement on this.
Absolutely.
And for
So-
those concerned that we wouldn't be able to transfer the property, usually when there's a monitoring requirement, we'll issue a certificate of compliance, but we'll make them post a bond for the monitoring. And we'll issue compliance so a property could change hands. If there was still outstanding work to be done, we would never do that. But just for monitoring purposes, we feel that it's unnecessary to hold up like a transfer of a property for that. Is the board comfortable with that?
So does this mean they'll do the planting and the initial invasive stuff before you get a COC?
Oh, they're gonna have to, yes.
Oh, okay.
And then, let's say the property sells next, in a couple, they're gonna have to do the project. And then if they want a COC because of a sale, because I believe the property is being marketed, then we would issue that, but we would have them post a bond for the continued marketing plus 10% of the plant stock. In case there's die.
Suggesting that the seller would post the bond because there'd be no incentive for the new owner.
I know, but I mean, it's hard for us to tell somebody we're not gonna issue them compliance over a monitoring report. So I want the board to understand that. And if you don't want me to issue compliance over the monitoring reports, we won't.
No, monitoring makes a lot of sense. I
Complete.
think if you could have like a partial certificate of compliance.
Okay, yep, we could do that.
That it's going to be subject to 3 years of monitoring.
Okay, I'm
Anything
good
else?
with that.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move to accept the order as discussed.
I'll
Carlo
second.
Hawk,
Roy wants to second.
She beat you. All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the order as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawk,
Pat,
Harrison,
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, the Christine M. Moynihan Trust, 335 Shore Street, Falmouth, Mass.
This is the amendment to add the air conditioning and generator platform to the structure. It is located over the driveway.
So really just the same conditions as the primary, correct?
Correct.
Anybody have anything they want to add? Betsy?
No, I'm going to make a motion to accept as discussed.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Ernie, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harrison,
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. We've issued an order of conditions. Before you all run away, two things. We don't have a meeting next week. And I'd like to point out, our great IT staff, Adriana and Thomas. You guys do a great job. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your due diligence. And with that, I'll accept the last motion.
One second, Mr. Chairman. I just want the board to know that I will be out of the office next week. Any one of you know how to reach me if you need me. Kevin and Alyssa and Mark will all be there for you. If you need them, Amy will be there too. So, but if you guys need to reach out to me, feel free.
Have
Okay.
fun, and I make a motion to adjourn.
Bird, second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Betsy,
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Mark,
Renee, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Russ,
Robbins, aye.
Steve. Mr.
Steve?
Patton?
He's there, he's wandering.
No,
Steve?
he's there. He's just muted. Steve,
Muted.
for you.
Steve doesn't want to go.
We'll leave him turned in.
Give me a thumbs up. You're muted. Okay.
Thumbs up.
Which
It is
thumbs
unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Jen, have
Thank
a
you,
good day.
Kevin Newton. I'm gonna call you.
Good night.
Night.